Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest live technical difficulty episode of VOX VOMITUS. Thank you all for being here. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of Pretty Ugly, The Japanese Box and Other Stories, From Daylight to Madness, and When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk. I had to remember the names of my books. Joining me today, as always, is my VOX VOMITUS vixen, Allison Martine, author of the Bourbon books, which includes Dibs Since September, Move On Melinda, Climb the Salmon Ladder, and Ranchers Take Manhattan.
That
Joining
like
us today, that sounds like you. Joining us today is our very dear friend, Chella Courington. She is here to talk about her latest novel, Janet Hall. Chella, first of all, thank you for your patience. Allison and I are not good with tech things, and we're using a brand new system today. So thank you for waiting 10 minutes for us while we all figured it out. And she's gone.
Well, that sounds about right. Like how things are going. I'm also still trying to get my
I love it.
my
Look,
everything cooperating.
I'll distract people. Look, so Janet Hall, Chella will be back.
Well, we'll just hold the book up and just hide her on the stream. And when she comes back, we will get it working. But
yeah, look
for
at that.
we are adjusting to and go ahead.
Adjusting. I think Chella is actually one of the very first people I ever interviewed years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I think you
that's right.
You and Abby might have been my first, but Chella might have been
like right after.
Right after. So I feel like it is only fitting that it's been a disaster today because
right.
She's been with us since the beginning. Good friend to us through publishers and drama.
Hear me? Chella's back.
I'm so bad on this stuff too.
That's okay, Chella. We've got you. I was just, vamping and letting everybody know that you were coming. I'll have you talk about yourself and your book in just a second. But I was remembering that you were one of the very first people I have ever interviewed. So I feel like it's fitting that on this day that we're using a brand new system that you are back.
And that's a great interview. I would not have known that I was your first.
Yeah, I think you were either my first or second. So, Chella, welcome to VOX VOMITUS. This is the first time you are here on this show. We are thrilled to have you. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself first, and then a little bit about Janet Hall before we sink into this.
Well, about myself.
Jennifer's got fire. I have pimento cheese dip.
This all makes sense when people read the book, or at least see the cover.
Try another cheese. Hearing it now, on occasions. I was born and raised in Southern Appalachia, North Alabama, and after high school, I left, and 22 years ago, to be exact, I moved to California, which has really been the greatest move I've ever made. It's wonderful. I'd never moved that far. And I'm so thankful I'm here today. My goodness. And but I needed some distance from me and where I grew up to be able to write about it. I've written for several years. I wrote poetry, I've written short fiction. I did a novella, and that's what Jennifer interviewed me about. But this, while it's fiction, is based a lot, it's set in the area where I grew up. Of course, I don't give it the name.
Yeah.
But a young woman from Georgia wrote me and said, "Gosh, I can't believe this. I'm from Tryon, Georgia. How did you get that name? Is there a Tryon, Alabama?" I said, "I don't think so."
Like, I hope not, after the way I talked about some of the people that live there.
I know. I do not want for them to cast shade on me. So the sort of trigger for this book was during COVID. Not a close, but an acquaintance who was a really good writer. He'd been nominated for the National Book Award for 2 different books. And I had spent some time with him. We have a mutual friend, but it just died suddenly. And he was just too young, and it just stayed with me, though I was not particularly close to him. He was an acquaintance that I just couldn't get it out of my feeling. And it kind of triggered this novel. So in the spring of 2020, during COVID, I started writing. And here I am.
Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. You know, we love your work. And honestly, Chella, it was so hard for me, like, because I know you, I'm reading this and I kept having to tell myself, these are not personal essays. Chella's husband is alive and well, and she has dogs, but she doesn't have a golden lab.
No. I was going to say, I've met Chella's husband. He's a lovely man. I've met Chella's dog. It's not a golden retriever, and he's amazing. But it does feel so real and so visceral that you have to tell yourself, this is fiction.
That's right. Ted's sister, my sister-in-law, said, the hardest thing with me on reading the book, I kept wanting you to come out. And certainly there are a lot of aspects of Janet that are me, but I didn't get married after high school. I did go to the University of South Carolina, but it just gets fuzzy.
Do you have the same favorite bourbon as Janet? The most important question.
At one time I did.
Are you saying your tastes have matured since then? That's okay.
I've gotten a little bit more money and to buy a little bit more expensive bourbon.
We like to hear that.
But I loved, it's that, well, you're both writers, so that love-hate relationship with writing. But I think that the love on this book probably was more than the struggle with it, or because I dealt with a lot of issues that I wanted to deal with and I've thought about. And I was influenced in writing the book, other books. I'm always influenced by Virginia Woolf. And Virginia Woolf says that, to write about domestic life is as important as men writing about wars. Men writing, so, and that was too the motivation for my novella. The closer in that you get with the situation, Woolf would say, probably the better you are. Not the better you are, maybe the better the story will be, or
you have such a distinctive style of writing too. And I remember reading your novella, which was Adele and Tom.
right.
Okay, Adele and Tom. That was written in like a series of vignettes. And I found even with Janet Hall, though it's more linear,
Right.
I love the short little chapters. I love that it almost feels like they're just essay after essay that at first might not seem overly connected, but then all of a sudden you're 30 pages in and you get such a feel for this life that this woman is inhabiting, this day she's having, this very, very long day. Did you intentionally go into it thinking, okay, I'm just going to write like very short chapters, very small little windows?
No, I actually didn't. I think that is maybe just more my style, or the way that, because I didn't go into it thinking. I went into it thinking she's got to deal with Jacob's death. how is she going to do it? And I'm kind of a pantser, in the sense that, it's sort of walk in the room, what's in the room, describe the room, describe how she's feeling. Look at Janet, what is she thinking? And I would, if with that revision, I would probably always stay in the character's mind, thinking, oh, this is so interesting. But I'm sure a reader would think, it's a
I feel like Allison and I have probably gotten those notes about our own writing. I know I've gotten that note of like, this is entirely in your character's head. Make her do something.
I
right,
played the fifth.
Yeah.
right. And gosh, and I use a couple of people have mentioned to me sort of a diary feel, because I do. I like December 19th, the funeral home. I do that intentionally because I move from past to present. And that
I was
could be
gonna
quite confusing, I think, without dates.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I love the fact that you go back and forth between where their relationship began way back when they were just in high school to the present, where she's dealing with his death. And it's such an unusual relationship because she's not dealing with the death of her husband. She's dealing with the death of her ex-husband, who she's still in this very unusual relationship with, that everyone else in the town kind of blames her for taking him away from the town and for basically limiting his potential or limiting what he could have done, and ultimately for his death.
Right, right. And she just can't get it right. But it is.
Well, I think she just can't get it right in other people's eyes.
There
I
you
mean,
go.
she's just doing the best she can.
May I just say, she shows up with a cake and is still told, like, what is this?
Multiple cakes.
Yeah, and I'm like, never turn away cake. What is wrong with you people? Especially tres leches cake. And I mean, you weave in so many other elements like racism and the small town feel of, oh, this town used to be this way and very Anglo and straight white, like the dentist teeth, back to, okay, now it's more diverse and has new character
And how they call
more
everybody
character.
Mexicans. Like,
Right.
I was like, oh, but just that one line, like, oh, they just refer to every Latinx as Mexican, tells you,
So much.
the reader, yeah, like everything we need to know about a lot of these characters.
Working that in, because I did want to work in that social commentary, and that took, because I wanted to be fairly, not subtle, but I just wanted to work it in. I did not want it to overwhelm the story, but I wanted the reader to be aware of this community and how the demographics of this community is changing, and how this community is not so unlike the rest of the state, the rest of the country, the rest of the world, I should say.
Well, and some of it you did through something as simple as visiting a different kind of cafe and finding other people. Well, I never have gone in there because it's a different ethnicity's type of food. Like, you were never curious to try this bakery. I'm there at the Panaderia. If they've got stuff, I would like to eat it. And
Yeah.
then also, like the situation with, okay, there was an elderly aunt who may have had some other relationships, and the town is just like, we kind of know, but we don't want to know because we don't talk about things like that. So you weave it in these different ways, but it's never just, I'm going to have a talk about gay and lesbian rights, or I'm going to talk about how this small town treats people who are not white. It's all done through the story and through these relationships.
Right. That's right. You're right on it. And I'll have to show you. I don't know if you can see it.
I can't see anything. I'm not wearing my glasses.
Well,
I can see
I can see
necklace
something.
with a
Is that the peace
there's
sign?
peace sign charm.
It's
And-
Aunt Grace's peace
Yeah.
sign.
one that Aunt Grace gave to Janet Hall. And I've been wearing this every day for 4 years because I've sort of vowed I'm kind of not superstitious, but Oh, I think it's good to keep something close at hand. That I'll wear this even through my sequel. Because I do have a sequel that I was working on until I started promoting the book. And that's a
Yeah,
big
that's a full-time job, promoting a book. Writing a book is a full-time job. Promoting a book, stressing out about a book, also, that's the most full-time job. Panicking about the book. So
I do that all the time.
I do that all the time. Panic when I'm
Even if
not
the book's
writing,
not done.
panic when I am writing.
No, it's so. But this is the necklace that Aunt Grace that I like to think of gave to Janet Hall.
So you said sequel. Is there any way to tell us a little bit about that without giving spoilers for this?
Does it feature pimento cheese sandwiches? I don't have bread right here. I just have a spoon. Is that wrong? If I just can I just have?
No,
I'll wait till the show's
no.
over. But I loved
People
that
are like,
little.
no.
I loved that bit of you're showing so much about the culture, about what kind of food they serve at things like that. I loved that. So hopefully that gets a
no.
I wanted to sit here
star and
eating
roll in the next
funeral
book, too.
potatoes today, but
Gee. So what was that? The sequel? It's going to be Grace and Irene.
I was hoping it would be a Grace story.
Yes, it's Grace and Irene. Irene is the teacher. That was that was Janet and Jacob's high school English teacher, who lives right next to her. And it starts out again. It's going to be, it may be more linear. I've only written about the first 50 pages, maybe. It may be longer too. But Grace grew up, of course. She was born and raised in Tryon. It's part of the Tryon trilogy. She was born and raised in Tryon. Irene is Jewish and moved to this Tryon when she was 8 years old. Her grandfather, she's from Akron, Ohio. Her grandfather had
Sorry.
Jennifer had a reaction to that. She's like, oh, Ohio.
I had
Oh
a visceral reaction to Ohio. Sorry, everybody from Ohio. I lived there for a very long time, so I'm allowed to have a visceral reaction.
Where in Ohio?
Oh, I lived in Columbus, the Columbus area.
Oh, yeah. So she moves to Akron. They send her father to be the manager of the rubber plant there that the grandfather started. And that's going to be a very conflictual, loving treatment. I will say, and I don't think this would ever be giving it away the way I started, that they are lovers, but they're closeted. Grace would not be closeted. Grace would like to move out, but the ironic thing is Irene doesn't want to leave now. But Irene doesn't want to. She feels that she's been through so much, what do I want to say, discrimination in her life, that she just doesn't want to deal with that. So, but they have those two houses right next to each other.
And in some ways, that's the ideal relationship.
It is.
I was just going to say it's convenient. I wasn't going to say it's ideal, but if you're going to have a relationship with someone that for whatever reason society can't know about, next door is pretty much the way to go.
Or even if you're somebody who just adores their own privacy.
Space.
Geraldine Page, who were married for years, lived in separate apartment buildings next to each other.
I also remember Frank Sinatra and Mia Farrow used to talk about how they would call each other at night and wave across Central Park at each other during their marriage because they each had apartments on the opposite side of the park, like, oh, good night.
I love
Not that Mia Farrow and Frank Sinatra were the, epitome of a healthy relationship, but
I wouldn't say that. No.
no, but
you know what I have totally enjoyed? We're talking about promotion. So a friend of mine advised, well, you need to extend your social platforms. And so instead of just Facebook, which is now turned into the Janet Hall page, I went to TikTok and to Instagram, and oh, great, thank you.
We're like, here's for your next page right here.
oh, we'll have to screenshot that.
Get all three of us at the same time. And I've totally enjoyed the TikTok response. It's been great to see how these issues are intergenerational. If anything, I love for people to feel the novel, to have that emotional, visceral response. And when you see it, because they make videos, I could just almost cry. That's what I want. That's what any of us want.
Yeah.
If you are an emotional writer, if what any of us want is that reader response like that.
Well,
And
I
that's
love that.
one of the-
Oh,
What?
continue, Allison.
Oh, I thought Chella was going to say something. Oh, I was just going to say, I do love that we have the ability through social media to be able to be interactive with people who have read our work. So it's not just here, take it, and then we'll run away. But what did you feel from reading it and getting to see that is amazing. I do want to ask, okay, so what's going on with TikTok? You may have to learn to put your TikToks on Reels, because half of the Reels I see on Reels are actually TikToks anyway. I don't understand any of this. So just pretend I do.
Right. We may lose TikTok. The rumor is Elon Musk may buy it, but that might be lost to me.
That's also a loss.
And then
like, oh,
arguing about China is that some people are going to Red Note, but Red Note is owned by China.
and they also have, supposedly, what I've been hearing is that they have anti-LGBTQ, and they're more conservative with like the amount of skin you can show, the amount of topics you can really talk about.
Red Note.
So,
Oh gosh.
That's kind of what I heard, but I hadn't heard it called Red Note. I just heard TikTok is having an exodus, but they're going to another Chinese-owned platform so that it doesn't really make sense and it's not necessarily going to provide what they want. But I do think with all of the changes in social media, it's just been difficult for people who are trying to not necessarily just sell books, but to make community, because the community keeps having to move and not everybody wants to do different platforms. Just in my own experience, I was on a certain website that I'm not on anymore for various reasons. And I was in an indie author book club, and I love my book club. It's full of all indie authors and some who are still working on their first book. And we read books only by other indie authors, and we do one book a month. And we were like, we would like to get off this, but what can we go to? And we ended up moving to a Discord, because it was, okay, all of us can figure out how to use this, and it's contained, and we can host the meeting rather than it keeps shutting down saying, your meeting is almost over. You guys have talked too long and gotten off topic too much. But not everybody can transplant a community that way. So it makes it really difficult.
yeah, and I
Right.
think now, especially because people are, for various reasons, anti-Facebook, anti-Instagram, anti-Threads, and people are like, well, I want to go to Blue Sky, but Blue Sky doesn't have the same vibes that we're used to. And let's face it, or features. And so it's been hard to, to gather the writing community again.
Yeah.
Right.
The way.
And I've been impressed with how on social platforms, as you mentioned, community, that is so much. I mean, I guess maybe readers particularly feel that that it's how difficult it is to have community of readers.
Yeah.
And it just means so much.
Well, it's incredible because, Allison and I started this podcast not just as writers, but as very exuberant fangirls to writers as well. So like to me, social media has been such a godsend of being able to connect with my favorite writers, being able to get to know them, get to have conversations with people that, before social media, we would just never have the chance to speak to, our very favorite writers in the world, or, or about the same like neuroses that we have.
That's
So
right.
I don't want to lose that. As much as I think we're all a little burned out on social media, we wouldn't be here having this conversation without it. I wouldn't know either of you two beautiful women without social media.
Absolutely.
Well, and I also love the fact that because reading becomes and writing is, they're both so isolating that having the way to bring together people who've read the same things and discuss them, most of us in our everyday life, maybe we know other readers, maybe we don't, and maybe the other readers don't read what we do, and only something as diverse as social media can kind of gather people up. We're like, you like this, I like this, and then we can go talk about it together. So I don't think anybody wants to lose those aspects of it either. So somewhere there's got to be a balance. I don't know what it is.
Well, there will be. We'll just have to have faith.
I'll have to move to California to be closer to both of you.
That what?
She wants to move to be by us because for those Chella's in California. Chella lives up in the Santa Barbara area. I live down in the Orange area. Between the two of us, there are multiple fires. So that's kind of keeping us apart at the moment. But I have jokingly told Jennifer to move to California, acknowledging that the cost of living is ridiculous here, and that is probably not a wise life choice. I have, though, encouraged her to move to a place where she doesn't freeze on a regular basis, or if she does, there's power. That's just kind of, I would prefer that for you.
Well, maybe we should say something. I mean, these fires are devastating. I mean, I'm sure the whole country, those who have empathy and compassion, are depressed by the devastation of this. This is the second largest city that's just been burned to the ground. I mean, it's like a dystopic nightmare.
It's very heartbreaking. And I think if we all look back to like our childhoods, I don't think I ever imagined as a child in the 80s or, before, or even in the 90s, that things like the climate disaster would be what it is right now. I never thought, there was not even an inkling in my brain that something like Los Angeles could be on fire, that we could be losing entire neighborhoods and suburbs, and tens of thousands of acres could be burning.
And one of the things I was just going to say about the reading community and empathy is that is one of the things that's drawing people together right now. I just want to do a brief shout out to Octavia's Bookshelf, which is a local bookstore that is near one of the fires near Altadena. And we have things like churches and community centers. Bookstores are community centers too, in so many ways. And they are the ones right now who are kind of the front line helping restore these communities and give people the emergency supplies while it's still happening. And that just shows the community. And I don't want to get into some negative stuff that's also been circulating, but of fandom of any other sort that is as empathetic as natural readers are. And that gets back to just this book, Chella, that you wrote. The empathy that is through here is just so on every single page, whether it's in the present or the past, and just feeling what Janet is wrestling with and the choices she made along the way. Even if you don't agree with them, you feel them so deeply. And I feel like that's one of the beautiful things about literary writing is it really gets deeper into the emotions rather than, oh, well, we're going to have this complex plot and we're going to put together all these pieces. And that's wonderful too. But to really linger in the emotional state, that's what something like Janet Hall really brings to the table. And I just applaud you for it because I've gotten to read it now twice.
And it's very much like for me, it reminds me so much of like a modern day Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. So like, because you can create and understand the entire universe of this woman's mind and her entire life in one day.
Oh
And
my
a lot of Janet Hall is that one long day.
Right.
And there were just like, I got chills when I was reading it and she was going to pick up the cakes. And I was just like, this is Mrs. Dalloway getting flowers. You know, there is so much more in a simple errand than, well, I'm going to pick up the cakes.
Right.
So
right.
bravo.
Oh.
This is why we love literary fiction here. Allison and I do read a lot of horror and fantasy and but literary fiction it's our heart. It's our heart.
Oh, I'm so touched. I love to be. That's what I was striving for.
Well, you achieved it. It's truly beautiful.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished, Chella.
We're excited to read the sequel, and I love the character you selected to do that sequel because you've created this town and this community, and we're kind of seeing one slice in time. I would love to see an earlier slice in time and how those people struggled and what the town looked like then, because we've already seen what it looks like now and seeing how the differences are, because we've kind of seen in the 80s and then present, and to get to see it what it was like
yeah.
And I'm even intrigued by a lot of like your
Grace was
side
young and making her.
characters. Oh yeah, sorry.
What?
Oh, sorry. There was a lag on my end, so I was talking over both of you. Sorry about that. All I was saying was I love a lot of your side characters, even the ones I love to hate. Leanne. Leanne. I would love to weirdly know more about Leanne. I'd like her to have a really bad day sometimes and hear about that. In a good way. I want her to have a bad day. I know. I'm just like, I want Leanne to do poorly in high school. I want Leanne to, but I loved to hate her.
But there is something redeeming about this woman, isn't there?
There is. I mean, they're all so human.
She raises those kids.
Yep.
She, it's just, she's a hero in her own right.
Yeah,
so, she's certainly not stay in her own mind.
That too.
In her right. And in her own eyes.
Yeah. No, I loved not liking Leanne a lot.
Yeah, at first she's quite. Yeah, well, you've known the type that has the biggest moment in their life, and she was the one with the go around strutting with the big tits. She was in some ways, she was the ideal sort of high school girl.
Yeah, she was a cheerleader.
No, she
was like majorette.
Majorette, that's it.
And she led those, and she called them my girl. And yeah.
It probably looks like I'm stabbing somebody. I'm trying to be a majorette. It's not working.
I know. I was like, Allison, you're giving
Buffy.
This is totally random.
Hush.
Buffy. I was gonna say it's the Buffy Hush thing.
Squirrel, catch.
Yeah.
Go with my majorette stick. What is that called? A baton. It's not a stick.
It's a baton. So Chella, you have a website. I think it's scrolling on the bottom. If people are just listening to this, give everybody your website, and everyone who's watching this live, watching it on the replay, listening to it, please make sure to check out Janet Hall. Chella, give us your website, anything else you want to promote.
See, what else? The web, I have a book of poetry that came out about a little before Janet Hall, Hearts Forged in Resistance. And I'm quite taken to that book of poetry. A good friend who's a beautiful visual artist did the cover of it based on a picture of a sunflower
I
that
love that cover.
taken, and then the blurb on the back is by a poet scholar that I've just admired all my life, Alicia Ostraker. And that book just means a lot to me. And I think it's worthwhile if you like poetry. It's a good book. I have been doing some readings and connected readings on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. And I took a poem, Grief, out that I have in Hearts Forged in Resistance. And then I have other works on there. Ladies in Waiting is fun, short stories. That's kind of magical realism.
I love it. Yeah, so everybody needs to check out your website, find everything.
Yeah, and if you go to my website, you can find all this, which is pretty easy to get to. It's chellacourington.com.
Perfect. Chella, thank you so much for being with us today, for bearing with our inaugural, can I say that word? Episode on this new format. We did it, everyone. And
We did it.
thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will be back in a couple weeks with a new episode of Vox Vomitus. Until then, happy reading.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.